Yeah,
I embrace it.
but courageous.
Oh, I was gonna say, I did promise my wife when I get a fix, I gotta get physical.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock on Monday, July 7. We'll call to order the Board of Directors meeting of the Holland Board of Public Works. Janet, can we have a roll call, please?
Thompson,
Here.
Maloof,
Here.
Engbers,
Here.
Lilly, Lynn,
Here.
Corbin, Couch,
Here.
Van Beek.
Here.
For the record, we have a quorum. Would the board please take action on the agenda?
Motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. At this time, we'll open our meeting to communications from the audience. We provide an opportunity for anybody who would like to address the board to do so, requesting you state your name and address for the record and adhere to a 5-minute limit. Any communications from the audience today? Hearing none, we'll close communications from the audience. And our first item on the agenda is the election of our board officers. Could we have a motion for that, please?
Do we need to do it in two, or can we do it as one?
You can propose to do it in one motion if there's concurrence with that. That'd be all right.
I'd make a motion that we appoint PJ as the board president chair and Carolyn as the vice chair, vice president, whatever the right terminology is, to continue in their roles as they've done for last year.
Full support.
That's a motion by Lynn, supported by Engbergs. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our general manager to introduce a new employee to the BPW.
All right, good afternoon. Yes, it's wonderful to see all of you. It is a brand new fiscal year as we've been just discussing election of officers. Thank you, PJ and Carolyn, for your continuation in your role. And I'm excited to talk about the amount of financial horsepower that I have behind me, sitting directly behind me. Not just Chuck, but I've got also our new employee with us as well. I'm very excited after, again, because of Chuck's gracious notice of his timeline on his retirement coming up later this year, we were able to start a process of recruitment for his successor a few months ago already, and with the goal of having somebody on board by this time. And actually, we were able to hit that mark. Got a very strong recruitment process and very strong candidates, and the person rising to the top of that is Janessa Carter, who's with us today. Very pleased to have her on board with us now. There's going to be a period of time through the next few months here where Chuck and Janessa will be transferring that knowledge, and it's a very critical time of the year too, because it's the closeout of the last fiscal year and getting through the audit process. So again, just real excited. Had a chance today to meet with PJ and Carolyn, as we do on a periodic basis, and had Janessa come and sit in on that meeting as well, so I had a little meet and greet there. But wanted to give Janessa a chance to introduce herself to the rest of you. We're very excited from her background is in this area, but I'll let her explain a little bit more about that. So the other microphone's up there, so I'll go ahead and give you this one here if that works.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Hello. Yes, Janessa Carter. I am coming to you from most recently Crow, the accounting firm where I did municipal advising as a manager for them throughout the state of Indiana. My hub was out of Indianapolis. Prior to that, I was at the City of Grand Rapids for 8 years in the utility finance officer position as well. So yeah, looking forward to joining everybody here. I live here locally in Holland and have been here since 2009. So very excited to apply kind of my knowledge and get to work with Chuck and kind of build upon the foundation that, you know, everybody here has been a part of. So thanks. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks, Janessa, and thanks, PJ, for that opportunity to do that.
Welcome.
So with that, I guess if we want, we can move right into the consent agenda. This afternoon, we have 6 items on the consent agenda. First, we have the minutes, approval of the minutes from the June 9 regular meeting and the study session on June 23. Second item we have, again, one of these items we have at the beginning of each fiscal year is a request for adoption of a joint resolution of the BPW Board of Directors and the Holland City Council that establishes the transfer amount from the electric utility fund to the general purposes of the city. This year, that amount has been established as $8,396,016 to be transferred from the electric utility ratably over the next 12 months. That'd be an interesting conversation as to who that ringtone is later on. Okay. Item C here is a request for adoption of a resolution that's also attached to create a contract between the City of Holland and an individual in our organization, which seems a little bit strange, but this is something under the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990 that each organization with facilities that emit emissions under that that are covered by those set of regulations have to establish both a designated representative and an alternate designated representative for the filing of these emission reports. And it's an actual contract between the city and that individual. In this particular case, the alternate designated representative currently is Trista Gagorski, and Trista has given us notice that she is leaving for another opportunity. We're sad to see Trista go, but to keep things in place in terms of a full complement, right now Joel Davenport is the designated representative. We're looking at establishing a contract here through this resolution with Madison Rudolph, who works in Trista's department right now and would kind of fill in that role as the alternate designated representative. So, and Madison is here with us today as well. If you had any questions for her outside of that in this particular item. But again, Joel is a designated representative and there's no change pending as it relates to Joel. Our thought is that when we onboard Trista's successor, there'll probably be another resolution for you at some point in the future to move that alternate designated representative status back to the manager of that department. So that's what that item is under item C. And then item D is a follow-up to our study session last month where we outlined some red line changes to our energy risk management policy. Tonight we're asking for adoption of those changes that we outlined last meeting. Similarly, last meeting we spent time with you to discuss the certain provisions underneath the water demand management program. And tonight we're asking for, again, the adoption of the program activities as presented in the June study session. They're also outlined in the table that's attached to the recommendation for water demand management. And then finally, item F is a request to amend the fiscal 26 electric production capital budget in the amount of $45,000 for chemical feed pumps. This is something that is in alignment with our plan to do direct water discharge from our cooling water basin, and the chemical feed pumps that are being purchased here much more controllable, which will help actually save cost of chemicals over the period of time. We're looking at both the chlorination and dechlorination of that water through these more precise pumps again, and so they have a very good payback associated with the investment in those pumps. So those are the items that are on the consent agenda this afternoon.
Any questions for Dave on the consent agenda items? Dave, on the transfer of funds, you covered that when we presented the budget earlier.
Yeah.
Would you maybe refresh us one more time?
Sure.
On
So the transfer is something that is allowed by city charter. Matter of fact, transfer of funds are allowed from net income of both the electric and water utility. That is something that we have regularly established a proxy for and have not really transferred from the water utility historically. And so what we have done and what the budget is based upon and this transfer amount is based upon are two components. One is a proxy using historical electric retail revenues, sales revenues, and those are based upon the average of the last 3 years' electric retail revenues multiplied by 6.25%. And that number is actually within a normative number of comparable utilities in the United States. When you look at APPA data, American Public Power Association data, the most recent survey result that we had there was that the median was at 5.6% as a proxy. So, and again, this is well within the third quartile number of that amount. So that is the amount from retail revenues. And then there's the wholesale sales component. What we're looking at there is the net income of the electric utility that is being derived from either energy or capacity sales on the wholesale basis. And so what we have done there is we have shared that 50-50 with the city, the net income that is derived from that. And that's what the two components that comprise this $8 million, roughly $400,000 number is in this particular year.
Yeah, that's much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Dave? Could we have action on the consent items?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
It's a motion by Maloof, supported by Lynn. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda items are approved. Going into major project updates?
Yeah, great. So we'll go ahead and get started on major projects. Really, just a few here that I would highlight. A lot of the other ones are fairly early in their process yet. One of the things I want to tell you right off the beginning, though, is an endeavor that we've been working on to incorporate this report into the board's SharePoint site has been completed. And so if you actually go out to the board SharePoint site, and maybe, Becky, if you can do that a minute. Again, you all know and have access to this as a repository of information that we put out there with a lot of historical presentations and other information that's key to the board's work. We now have this information duplicated out there, so you can click on that major project list right there and it will bring you to the same report that we're looking at right here. Good news with that is I think going forward we're just going to have a cadence of trying to keep making sure that this is updated ahead of the packet going out, so that when you get the packet, one of the things that you can also do is look at this and maybe more by exception ask questions if you have questions about the status of projects. Certainly we'll bring to you closeout memos, as we always have, so you know when these projects are being completed, what the result of those were. Or if we have some major issue that we need to highlight, we'll certainly bring it up. But we're going to probably be doing more of an by exception reporting on this going forward now that you have access to the information on an ongoing basis. And it's going to be live information, so as we update it, it is live with what you're getting. With that being said, though, tonight what I would highlight is Holland City Fiber here. You see that we're still working in several fiber hoods. Fiber hood number 7 completion is a little bit behind schedule. We plan on getting that fiber hood turned over for the actual provisioning of service to end-use customers here by mid-month. Overhead construction is actually going on in fiber hood number 8, and then underground construction in fiber hood 9 and 10. I think fiber hood 9 and 10 are more in the Holland Heights area. Fiber hood number 8 is actually a little bit more south, like by 40th Street, if I'm south and west, yeah, a little bit more. So, so activities continuing on there, and we're getting closer. If one of those fiber hoods is near you, knowing that we're getting close, and so get ready to again put your interest in if you haven't already. We'll be starting to reach out to customers in those areas or potential customers in those areas to get service fulfilled. Also, key item here is our outage management system has now gone live. So we're excited to say that, and I don't know, Becky, if that's something, again, you want to pop up here. So under our website, main website, under electric, you can see the electric outage screen right here. Again, good news is nothing's showing up right there, and never know what you're going to get when you click on a link without having done so beforehand. But if an outage shows up here, it'll show similar to the previous one where you have a polygon created around the affected area, and it will have some information in it regarding the number of outages that are current in that area. Also, it's a tool that through this, it's a work in progress yet, but different from our previous system, this map should restore automatically based upon the actual meters going back live again or going back online. Previously, we had to have people go in and actually clear the outage on the map, so the map should be a lot more real-time interactive and current. So we're excited to get this turned over to the surveillance system now and have this functioning. So I wanted to point that out. And then, yeah, I think down below here, we're getting closer on the water treatment plant and dehumidifier replacement. You can see that the work should be completed here really by the end of this week, and getting the startup and commissioning of that going soon after that. And then going down a little bit further here, we've got the electrical system upgrades. It's still a little fairly new in the process, but we do have the equipment now. And so it shouldn't take that much longer. You know, it's really getting the MCCs on board to get that equipment up and going. So hopefully that'll be turned around here fairly soon as well. Still working with finalization of a design change for the conveyance of biosolids. And again, that's going to be on the list here probably for the next year, because even if we get through that process, there'll be the procurement of that equipment and then the installation of that equipment. But that is something that's being supported, you know, by CB&I on their dime. So, you know, we're just continuing to monitor and interface with them to get that solution in place. I think that's pretty much the highlights that I would give tonight on the list there, unless something else is kind of popping out at somebody.
Any questions?
Great. So with that, I'll move on then to section 8 of the agenda is the regular agenda. 3 items tonight under the regular agenda to cover with you. First one is being handled by Joel Davenport and has to do with an opportunity for renewable energy certificate purchase commitment. And again, something that's allowed to us underneath the energy law, some flexibility to use certificates as part of our compliance strategy. So Joel, turn it over to you so you can walk through the details of this.
Sure. What we have before you here is an opportunity to do some purchases of disassociated RECs. So RECs where we would buy just those energy attributes and not the actual electricity or capacity. This is something that really comes about Public Act 235. We've talked about that before, kind of this ramp up of the renewable energy requirements where we're going to have that 50% in 2030, 60% in 2035. This is really prepping for that. I think we've talked about before just the time to get new resources into service. I mean, just realistically, and the market's not real great right now, but even if it were, the time to get a new resource under contract, constructed, and in service is quite a while, where we're going to have to rely on some of these disassociated RECs for a while, which luckily Public Act 235 does allow for us as a municipal public power provider. The transaction we have here is actually they're looking at about an average of 150,000 RECs per year. That's going to equate to 11, 12% of our total sales. So, putting that in context of that 50% we're working towards. What it really allows us to do in the short term, because these RECs have a 5-year life, is bank some of those RECs from the resources in our portfolio and use these for compliance kind of in the meantime. Kind of gives us an ability to shift some of that down the road and really work towards that compliance goal. The counterparty in this case, this is through MPPA, but the counterparty is American Municipal Power, AMP. They have renewable resources within both the MISO and PJM footprints. MPPA they started this conversation actually looking at for RECs within the PJM footprint for some other members, but they had these come up Originally, there was a couple members within MPPA that were looking at these MISO ones. Just happens to be that we're the only counterparty at this point for the MISO ones, but the volume works out well for us. The price is very good relative to what we look at, kind of that imputed price going forward when you're looking at like a PPA and you look at the price that we would pay today, take out that energy cost and that capacity cost, kind of that remainder would be what you're really paying for the RECs. This is very competitive, actually better than what we would get in any contract today for a PPA. So it's a good opportunity for us to kind of move forward and help close some of that gap that we have today.
We're the only one on the MISO counterpart.
On the MISO side, we're just in a little different position than some other members of MPPA. A lot of them are smaller, so they are, and they've just had an opportunity to get a little further and their percent renewable than we are currently.
Got it.
And part of that also is, this might have been before you were on the board, Kyle, but a while back we had a wind farm down in Indiana that we were actually working to renew, and the market kind of went through some swings, and that unfortunately fell apart. But that created a little bigger hole than where we thought we were going to be at this point in time. So this just kind of helps as a stopgap measure towards that compliance.
Do we have the opportunity to purchase more?
This is all they have available. We did do another one of these transactions not that long ago for a much smaller volume. I think that was around 12,000 RECs a year. So this is obviously much bigger. We'll continue to look at these, but obviously we need the right price, right duration.
Right, so I think there'll be probably a combination of strategies. I think,
Yeah.
again, as certain projects that are, let's say, projects that are bundled with energy and capacity, actual like solar PPAs or wind PPAs become available, we'll have some of those as well. But again, this flexibility that we have to buy disassociated RECs is a very, I think, powerful compliance strategy. We just have to find the right situation where we have states that do not have maybe an RPS standard, renewable portfolio standard in that particular state that utilities are working to comply with, but have an actual generator that qualifies as a renewable. And that again is not a large area of availability, but we're continuing to canvass that and see where those opportunities might arise.
And that actually raises just an item I was going to mention. These particular RECs kind of align exactly with what Dave's talking about. These happen to be from hydroelectric facilities down in Kentucky where they don't have those RPS requirements, so they're available for our usage.
And again, if you look at the market condition for PPAs that are bundled right now with solar and wind, or especially solar, if you look at those type of prices, we've seen some significant increase in those prices. Not only are they higher, but also, as Joel said, if you take that and you model the energy and the capacity value from those contracts and you deconstruct it to see what's left for the attribute, the attributes that would be priced in those contracts would be significantly higher than what this transaction
Yeah, they're
is.
probably going to be closer to double what we're talking about here.
And I've got a lot of numbers in my head, so forgive me if I don't have it right on, but it's 2030, it starts to ramp up, but there's an on-ramp to the number of RECs we need. And it starts somewhere in the 600,000?
So 15% is our requirement until 2030, and then it goes to 50%. And so when you look at the number that we have right now, our load, I think it's about 200,000 is the 15% requirement based upon our load.
Kyle's pretty close. I think
Yeah.
if you look at that 50% in 2030,
Yeah.
For some reason,
It's-
600.
it's going to be
Yeah, that would
around
be
650,000, I think, is where we're projecting right
in
now.
2030. But it's not really a ramp up, it's more of a big step change.
Yeah, it's just a big step.
Yeah.
So you put that in context of this
This is
150,000. you see-
25%.
Yeah,
of what we're
and
gonna need.
now again, we can do some banking in the meantime because these
Right.
have a 5-year life. So some of these we're getting over the next several years. We can actually use multiple years worth towards like the 2030 compliance.
Yeah, so our growth will be like this, but the requirement will be like this.
Sure.
And the amount that's in this gap above that requirement will have that 5-year life on it so that we can bank and use it into that next cliff location.
Yep.
Partly if legislation changes. If it doesn't change.
Yeah,
Correct.
unless there's legislative change.
And even if there's legislative change, I mean,
And helps.
you look at the value we have here, it's really a low risk because there's always going to be a market for these out there that we could always resell them to if it came to it.
Yeah. They're a viable commodity for buying and selling until you retire them.
Yes.
And we don't claim them until we retire them either
Correct.
in terms of our percentage. So, you know, there's been a lot of work done by the SEC even in creating standardization around the how you represent, how green you are, how, you know, what kind of renewable percentage is in your power supply, and so that's something we're very careful about, you know, making sure that what we're representing out there in terms of our percentage of renewable really relates to what actual certificates we retire in a year, not what get generated in a year. And so, because we could turn around and report something that here's how much we've done, and then turn around and sell them, and somebody else is reporting it for their compliance, right? So we only report what we actually retire as our percentage.
Correct.
You're buying some MISO, some PJM.
These are all MISO.
Oh, these are all MISO.
There are separate MPPA members. Sorry if I confused things a little bit there. There's
Okay.
actually, MPPA started it as one transaction that's kind of worked into two transactions where PJM members are buying RECs for PJM assets that AMP has, and we're purchasing the RECs that AMP has from MISO available.
Michigan is a little bit of Swiss cheese in the southwest part of the state that Indiana, the subsidiary of AEP, Indiana, Michigan serves. AEP is actually registered in the PJM Regional Transmission Organization. So communities like South Haven, Pawpaw, Niles, they fall into that area that is PJM. So even though they are MPPA members, Michigan Public Power Agency members, they are being served by power in the PJM RTO. And so they have that separate transaction where Holland is taking part in the MISO
Yeah.
I
transaction.
just wanted
For-
to make sure we weren't buying
for our-
PJM. If you
No.
were,
No.
how did that work?
For our compliance, they have to either be generated within the state of Michigan, so they could be within PGM in the state of Michigan,
Yeah.
or they have to be within our regional transmission.
But not to complicate things too much, we do buy PJM RECs.
Yes.
Matter of fact, Southeast Berrien landfill is actual PJM. And, you know, we've actually got one project in MPPA that was, or is a PJM asset as well, another landfill in Watervliet that is a PJM asset. There's a tool that allows for transfer of PJM RECs into MISO. Alternatively, and what we've done in some cases, if the arbitrage, the opportunity is better, in the REC qualifies in more than Michigan, we've sold those RECs in like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and some of those markets, made money there, and allow us to buy actual credits or certificates in Michigan. So,
Did that last year, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. yeah.
What's the cost on these?
Sorry,
What's the cost of these?
cost is $4 a rec, so you're looking at about $600,000 a year.
Buy more.
Yeah, we're getting everything we can out of this right now, but yes.
I mean, yeah, because we're talking 20s plus.
It's,
Where your forecast?
there's forecast of that going up significantly as the demand,
Correct.
if the demand stays on per the state regulation, it will put pressure on it.
$4 a rec, 600,000 a year, 10 years?
Yes,
That's where the 6 million comes from in the
Correct.
contract?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's not it's a fixed amount for that period of time. There's not an escalator on that amount. right?
yeah, fixed
Yeah.
price the entire
Yeah.
period.
They get cheaper as we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Legislation changes. If he's used, we don't need it. Yeah.
Are we ready for a motion?
Motion to approve the signing of the power purchase commitment authorization as stated.
Support.
Motion by Baloo, supported by Lynn. Any further discussions?
I have one more question. If, what you just said, if legislation changes and we don't need them, are there other states that are more stringent and would still have requirements that we could sell them?
It all
Well, for-
depends on what the state's rules are in that particular state, right? So our state has allowed for these to be able to be transferred in because Michigan's rule allows for municipals to use those as a compliance to meet their compliance requirement. So other states around Kentucky, may have, or may in the future have requirements that would allow it, right? But to the extent that they're transferred into Michigan, even if the law changes, doesn't mean that the law changes in the way that eliminates renewable obligations.
It just might reduce.
Might reduce it, right? So I don't see this as a situation where you're going to just, have a situation that just, alleviates any requirement for renewable energy in Michigan.
Well,
So
the other
it could
thing-
affect the supply and demand relationship and therefore the pricing in Michigan.
Yeah.
But I don't see that, especially with where this number's coming in from a value standpoint, I see it as a
You
very
feel
low
pretty good
risk.
about that?
I would also add a couple things that before we'd even envision selling them, there's other uses that we would have for these. One, in addition to the state legislation, we have a community energy plan that we're trying to meet, right? Which may also be in our interest to retire additional RECs to achieve the goals of the community energy plan. Another part is we have the elective renewable rate. If you'll recall, we made some changes to that a while ago. Well, these same RECs could be used for that program to satisfy our customers' needs. So
That's right.
there's a lot of potential use for the RECs.
Which is why we're buying 150,000 of them instead of 600,000
Sure.
that eventually.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, this
This
is,
is hedging.
it's a portfolio.
Correct.
It's a portfolio.
We're hedging towards a direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Okay, item B, something that we brought to you during the water utility issues discussion, at least this last year, if not the year before, where we've been concerned about a certain vintage of concrete water transmission main. And this year experienced a leak actually on a portion of that, not necessarily due to condition of the main, but more due to, I think, ground conditions around that main. But nevertheless, has been something that we've wanted to move forward on some additional level of understanding what the timeline is for our need to address water mains. And so Pete's here to talk about this particular technique and what we're recommending tonight. So Pete?
Great, thank you. Yeah, this one's exciting for us in the water wastewater group that we're getting to the point where we can have this recommendation in front of you. We've been working with a couple different vendors about doing this for a couple years, and in that time period, the vendor has transitioned from a single vendor out there providing this technology to the inventors of that technology splitting off and starting their own company to create a competing environment. So we actually have the benefit of some competitive pricing now. A couple years ago, this would be a lot more expensive than we're able to do it now with this new team that's been put together. But yeah, as Dave mentioned, we have quite a bit of concrete transmission main in the system, the two main routes going from the water plant out to the distribution system. The original one's 1940s, 1950s vintage, the newer one's 1970s vintage. The goal is to inspect both of those routes using the technology. But because of the cost, even though it is competitive, it is a high cost inspection. We're going to break that up into two phases from a budget standpoint. So this recommendation here is for the newer pipe, actually, the 1970s vintage pipe that we want to inspect first. The reason being that we did have a recent failure on it, which was more than likely due to settling of the ground around it, not the pipe itself. But that did give us an opportunity to take 2 sticks of that pipe out and have a very creative demolition of those sticks of pipe with some specialists that took some parts of it, tested it, and we're able to confirm that 1970s pipe is of a known defect origin. It was a plant in Michigan that made it in the 70s. We did confirm that out of every single one of the wire wraps inside of that pipe that we sent off, every single one did have a longitudinal crack in it, which is what we expected to happen. So it was confirmation. It's a type of pipe where there's a steel cylinder on the inside that kind of takes the brunt of the pressure, and then there's a pre-stressing wire wrapped around it, and then all of that is kind of sandwiched in concrete. It's the cylinder and the wire that are our primary concern, and so that wire was made to be a very high strength wire in the 1970s. The result of which was that when it was pulled through the die to make it a wire, it got very hot and it developed this longitudinal cracking in it. And so that cracking allows corrosion to happen a lot quicker because you're cracking through the wire segment. And so once you get enough of those wires to have corroded out, you've significantly weakened the pipe. And so those are the main failure mechanisms that we're looking for and hoping not to find. However, a lot of other utilities that have this specific pipe from this specific plant have had some big failures. GLWA in particular used this pipe a lot and has had some failures on it. So that's why we want to do this inspection. The tool that we're going to be looking at is a free swimming tool. So there's one point that we put it in the system and there's no tether. We use flow in the pipe and the way that we valve it to push it through the system. And while it's floating through, it's doing an electromagnetic scan to identify where we have a break in the continuity of that wire, where there's kind of a corrosion point, so that we know exactly how many wires are broken and where they are. There's also a ultrasonic sensor on it that is listening for leaks. And so if we have a break or a defect at a joint or at a service tap location and it's leaking actively, we're going to find that even if the threshold for a wire break hasn't quite been reached yet. And that also has lights and cameras so that we can get an interior view of the pipe as well, see if there's any rubble, debris, air pockets at the top of the pipe that would indicate we've got some settling going on like we just had with that recent break. So those 3 data streams all overlay on top of each other, give us a real good idea of what's happening. End result is that we can either say we have 10, 20, 30 more years in this pipe, or if we do these 5 repairs, we can get more life out of it. Worst case scenario, there's a larger replacement going on, but from GLWAs and other references experience with this technology, it really allows you to do some targeted repair work to get the most out of the asset. So this recommendation, sorry for that long-winded explanation, is for about half the footage, but just over 5 miles, starting at Ottawa Beach Road and 168th kind of area, not quite at the plant, going across the channel and then running down 32nd Avenue. And then next year we would follow that up with a similar sized effort to do the northern transmission main. So happy to answer any questions on that.
Why in the winter?
We typically don't want to do anything with the transmission and the storage systems during the peak demand, so we always say everything like that needs to happen after Labor Day. And then it's a question of the availability of the team and getting the insertion and extraction points constructed, because we do need to, when we're done, we need to be able to trap this device in a smaller diameter main to the point where we can take that section offline, dig it up, and pull it out. So there's a little bit of field work that goes with it. But Insight, the vendor that we're recommending, has about 40 kilometers that they're doing in the Netherlands in November and October. So we're either trying to get in ahead or after that. So more than likely it'll be after that bulk of their work. Yeah, and sorry, I didn't mention pricing. So the competitive quotes were from Pure Technologies. These are pricing for the entire phases, both phases. Pure Technologies, which is the original vendor, at $1.2 million, and then the new company at $900,000. So some good savings there with going with the innovator, I guess you might say.
Do we know how long it takes to get from point A to point B with the device?
Yeah, it'll be within the span of a working day. So we'll get it in kind of 7 a.m. and then push it through and hopefully have it out, before the sun sets. That's the plan.
And so this
Expensive day.
is diagnostic in its nature.
It is, yeah. So it's Unfortunately, not able to perform any repairs yet. That's coming down the technology tree in 10, 20 years where these guys will actually be able to do repairs as they find them. This will be fully diagnostic. There are sensors along the way that'll get placed on the route and will ping that device as it moves through. So we'll know exactly where it is at any given point in time. And then the company Insight is partnering with an engineering firm, HDR, a very reputable engineering firm, to kind of take the data stream and provide that alternative analysis and recommendation for the repairs. And they're also partners for GLWA on some of their pipe repairs. And those are typically getting inside the pipe, manned entry, and doing a carbon fiber overlay on the inside of the pipe to preserve it.
Any further questions for Peter? We have an action on the recommendation.
Motion to approve a contract with Insight Water Technologies in the amount of $403,000 with a 10% contingency of $40,300 for a total of $443,000 pending approval as to form from the city attorney.
Support.
Motion's by Engbers, supported by Lynn. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Pete's going to stay right up there because the next one is also in his area and it has to do with engineering services associated with distribution main replacements around 8th Street area, east side of town.
Yeah. Thank you. Brian Ritchie was supposed to present this, but he's going to be out unexpectedly this evening, so I'm going to take it on for him here. But this is our kind of routine water main replacement project for next calendar year, so 2026 calendar year. So we're going to get going on design for that now. This is kind of a mixed bag. It's not just a residential neighborhood like we're doing right now with Southwest Heights. The project RFP was 8th and Waverly, and so you might see it called that in future project references because that's kind of the more critical area. What we're doing here is tackling both transmission as well as distribution main. There's a segment of transmission main, 20-inch concrete main, just like we were just talking about, in Waverly Road itself, from 13th to about 10th Street. We've replaced south of there in a previous project, so this is an opportunity to kind of finish that run of concrete pipe in Waverly. There is a 12-inch main that runs parallel to it in Waverly as well that continues all the way to 8th Street. And so that intersection of 8th and Waverly, we've had some exciting times at recently with water main breaks and have blown it up recently. So this is a project to address some of that aging larger diameter 12 and 20 inch in the 8th and Waverly region, which is going to shoehorn in as well with some city transportation improvements along 8th Street to continue the bike lanes that the road commission put in west of the highway, all the way east and up to Papa to kind of give a residential connector there for pedestrian and bicycle access. So that's kind of where the 8th and Waverly naming convention comes from. But there's a good chunk of this project that will continue on into the Holland Heights to do smaller diameter distribution main replacement as well. So kind of two separate areas, but all one construction season. So kind of being treated as one engineering job here, and that's what we're presenting here for you. We did go out for bids, proposals on this engineering work. We solicited from 9 vendors, got 5 proposals back. The other 4 were too busy to take on the work, which is a common theme lately. So we were actually pretty pleasantly surprised to get 5 of them back. Several of them bunched closely together, so also exciting to see that, which allowed us to really drill into the qualifications and make a good decision on the engineering firm based on their qualifications. The recommendation you have here is to go forward with Holland Engineering for this work. Fleece and Vandenbrink did submit a proposal that was slightly below them. They did acknowledge in their proposal, though, that they did not meet the staffing requirements. We have a certain number of years that we like to see our construction inspectors have on their resume, so they did not meet that. And then although it's not a requirement per se, like the inspector, their design team, the proposal was also fairly junior, and the hours that they allocated to the project was also a little bit lower. So although the total cost came in lower, we don't think that the value was quite there. And looking at the hours hours that are proposed between Fleece and Holland Engineering, the hourly rate on average for Fleece was about $150 per hour invested in the project. At Holland Engineering, that's about 115 hours per dollar invested, per hour invested in the project. And so we're getting more value for a slightly larger project cost there with Holland Engineering. But Holland Engineering has been working on a lot of our recent projects as well. Their office is literally right around the corner from this project, so there's some value to them being right there and seeing it every day. And so based on those different factors, we're pretty comfortable recommending Holland Engineering for this work. Fleece does hold other contracts with us for lift stations, and some of the other firms that provide proposals like Spalding and Decker are working on other projects too. So we do have existing relationships with everybody else here on the books too. Any questions on that? It's going to be mostly ductile iron main that we're going to be replacing this with, potentially some PVC up in the neighborhood for the smaller diameter work, but 8th and Waverly will be ductile iron main.
Any questions for Peter? What's the favor of the board?
I recommend we approve a contract with Holland Engineering in the amount of $504,308 with a 10% contingency of $50,430.80 for a total of $554,738.80 pending approval as to form from the city attorney.
Support.
Motion by Engberg, supported by Lynn. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved.
Okay, thank you very much.
We can round up or down to the closest dollar.
Thanks, Pete.
One more decimal place out.
I've got a thing for cents. I don't like it.
Other business tonight.
No other business that we have. I can move into comments from the general manager. First thing I'd like to say, I'm trying to learn from Ted to have an efficient meeting, so I think 4:45 tonight is not too bad. So trying to follow.
Well, I got a question.
Yeah. So comments I have, our next meeting here, our study session is scheduled for July 28th. Plan on introducing again or reminding about our policy governance model and spending a little bit of time talking about what are the policies within it and starting to assign sort of a homework here in a way so that we can have the board spend some time going through some sets of those policies and then at subsequent meetings coming back and exploring if there are any questions or need for a little bit deeper revision or exploration around those particular policies. So it'll take a few meetings to get through. It's a pretty good list of delegation policies and governance policies, but we'll start that process. The other thing that we want to do is introduce an opportunity. Appreciate city's work on this as well. It's something that's been kind of on our radar for a while, this concept of whether some kind of pool for insurance would make sense. We explored some things previously as related to liability coverages and property coverages. Didn't really find a good fit there for us, but what's come to the table now is an opportunity to join an entity called The Pool. That pool, I think, represents about 22,000 employees throughout the state of Michigan, many municipalities and schools and other jurisdictional type of entities out there where we would fit very well into that cohort. From the initial evaluation, has some very good savings potential as it relates to administrative fees, but also because of the diversity of risk, some opportunities on what right now we pay for stop loss coverage. We're a self-funded, a self-insured entity right now between the city and the BPW. But through this larger pool, we'll have some more diversified risk and an ability to really kind of alleviate some of that stop loss coverage that we would have to otherwise incur a cost directly for. And then also just the power of that pool as it relates to some of the prescription a buy down, I think, is also in that as well. So cumulatively, this could be about $500,000 a year in savings. And so we think it's worthwhile to move forward on this, but we want to have it in a study session first. The city recently did study this in its study session, and I think received some some positive feedback there. So if things go well with this, with you, then we would bring that back in August for approval, and the city would do the same, so that we'd be lining up for a renewal, enrollment period here at the end of the year for the next calendar year, which is our open enrollment is started, kind of late in November, early December timeline. So, so look forward to those two items coming up here on the July meeting, the July study session. The other thing I wanted to bring up under comments today is that we have an open house, again in collaboration with the city, coming up on August 1. It's another what we call a touch a truck event. So for kids that come in and want to spend time around some of our larger trucks, the BPW trucks, fire and police have apparatus that are going to be there, as well as the Polar Patrol Unit, which is very good at getting out ice cream.
They like the stuff inside that truck.
Inside that
Just
truck.
touching the truck.
Yeah, they want to taste that truck, I think is what they want to do. So the Polar Patrol will be there as well. It's from noon to 2 p.m. on August 1 at the Energy Park. I believe that's where it's at, right? It's at the Energy Park. I think I was assuming that, but I think that was where it's at. So yeah, so a fun event to look forward to there, and we'll be getting the word out on that. So if you see others, please share that news out there too. That's all I have today.
Great. Communications from the board? Hearing none, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Maloof, supported by Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.